Hey guys, this is the Cooking Company, and welcome to another episode of Customizing Tutorial. Have you ever wanted to sculpt a detailed pattern kind of like this? Or this? Maybe this? Or this? Or how about... So first off, you're going to want to take whatever medium you're using. For example, right now I'm using Sculpt just as a example, because I'm just gonna mess it up later. This is not permanent. But if I were to be doing this for real, I would use epoxy Sculpt to put it on the figure. Now whatever it is that you're gonna be using, you go ahead and put it on your figure and make sure, you see how thick that is? That's horrible. You need to squish it down really nice and make it really thin. If you're using epoxy, it shouldn't be too hard, because the first time you mix it, it's all really nice and pliable. Sculpt is a little harder to work with, like this. So I'm kind of having a little bit of a hard time, but just make it nice and thin. Maybe even a little thinner than that. Just remember, the thicker it is on the figure, the more detail you lose, like the muscle indentations that are already on there. And if you put it on joints or like smaller areas like the upper arm or the lower arm, if you do it too thick or too big, you might lose articulation in the joints. So just keep that in mind and plan your figure out accordingly. And if you mess up, you know what? Just rip it off and try again. So once you have it on your figure, I'm just going to leave it like that because I'm just exampling it. I'm going to show you how to do, well, I don't know if this is really chainmail or plate mail or just like kind of a mix of the two. What I have here is just the inside tube of a ballpoint pen. See, that's the writing part, and that's just the other end. And this is a completely metal one. If you're lucky enough to find one of these, I recommend you use it and keep it, because it's nice. Otherwise, you could use anything. You could use like a needle or any other poking thing, anything that you want, because a needle will work too. All you do is just poke it into clay like that. So I'm going to show you a little bit. You see what I did there? I did the one hole and then I did the one next to it, and it ruined the first hole. So you want to be very careful. The thinner your clay is, the less that should happen. But, you know, I recommend you guys practice off your figure first. And if you can see what I'm doing, I'm kind of going in an in-between sort of pattern. The next row of dots is in between the first row of dots, and you keep going like that. You don't have to make a triangle shape. I was just doing that to show you. So that's pretty much the technique that we're going to be using throughout this tutorial, is doing it in between. Oops, kind of messed up there. So eventually you just do that all over your clay, and you end up with something cool looking like that. Yeah. So the second technique we're going to talk about, see if I can rub this off, is circle. I'm just using the other side. See, what you want here is something that makes the outline of a circle. So you could use like a straw, a regular plastic straw, but those are kind of big. If you're going to be doing like action figures, you want something really small like this. But that just depends on what it is that you're sculpting. Maybe you do want circles that big. So all you do is just poke it into clay. Oops, took a chunk out. Huh. You could keep that if you like that texture. If you want just to keep the circle texture with the outline, you just keep it, whatever. And you just keep doing that, and eventually you end up with something that looks kind of like this. And if you mess up, or maybe some parts chip off the edges or anything, you know, that's not really important, because once you paint it, it's going to look great. And another thing I want to recommend to you is that when you put the the clay or whatever it is, epoxy, on the figure. Once you're done squishing it on there, go take like a piece of plastic or something and squish it on to take all the fingerprints out. You want to start with a smooth surface and then start indenting it, because after you indent it, you're going to try to smooth it out or buff it out later. It's probably going to mess with the indentations. So the third technique, and probably my favorite that I'm going to show you, I know you guys are probably thinking, ooh, poke it in the clay, that's original. Well, here you go. I'm using my Revlon shaping nail buffer. That's right, it's metal and it has a nice little pointy point. And that's what you want, is a little pointy point. Technique for this would be to press it into the clay again, you know, just like that. And there it leaves a little triangle, right? And then you just keep doing that and it makes it look really cool. This is what I call the scale armor. And now if you're trying to think in like real life or whatever, scale armor, the scales go one on top of the other all the way down. So in order to achieve kind of that look, we're gonna have to angle the tool to a degree like this. Like, don't press it flat on the clay like that. Angle it so that the tip is going more into the clay than the rest of it. Like, so it's really deep at the point and it kind of fades out toward the end. And you want to do that for every single triangle that you make. Because what we're doing is we're not making the scales, we're making the space in between the scales. Which you can't really tell the difference with the triangle, but if you're making other shapes, it will definitely show you. So I'm going to make a couple of rows here. And here's the first row done. As you can see, it's much deeper where the tip is and much less deep. It's near where it's open. You see that? And so what we made is an indentation like this. That's the space in between the scale. The scale is actually this part that pops out. Those are the scales. So I'm going to go ahead and make round 2, or the second row. I'm going to start right here at the tip. So start tip to tip like that. So here I'm done making 4 rows, and you can see that it's really deep in there. But of course yours won't be as deep because this is way too thick to use on an action figure. But you could just do this if you're making just some polymer clay charms. You could just do this directly into your charm and you'll have that effect. So it's whatever project you're working on. This is just a cool little effect sort of thing to do. And what I like, and you could do this with a texture plate and just press the whole thing on there and you'll get a whole bunch of them already. But I like to use this to make each individual scale myself if you're doing something like this where it needs to wrap around the whole arm. And of course you're going to mess up a little bit. This is actually my first attempt that I ever had with this technique. So it looks a little bit raggedy. And I see some fingerprints in there. Didn't take my own advice. But once you paint this, it's going to look super great. I guarantee it. The paint does wonders. And that was the scale armor with a triangle point. If you want to make other types of scale armors, for example, dragon scale, which are the rounded scales at the bottom, or even a different shape, like, I don't know, square shape maybe, square scales, you could probably make just your own tool. This is one of those flossing toothpick things, and all I did was dremel in the sides here. But obviously this is too big for, you know, to make it like for a 6-inch figure. But just to show you the technique, what you would need to do is not make the shape that you're doing. So for example, this doesn't look like a circle, right? What you need to do is do the half of the circle, cut it in half, and then switch the pieces. So, because remember, we're doing the space in between the circle scales. And that's what it looks like in between, is the sharp point, and then it rounds off to either side. So that's the shape you need to make your tool. So I made a quick diagram of what the tip of your tool should look like. No jokes, please. And of course, to make a triangle, it looks like a triangle. That's the easy one. To make a circle, you want those curved, the same size curve on both sides. My drawing is horrible. But the same exact quarter circle shape on both sides of the point. And square, you could do just, it's basically just a 90-degree angle on both sides. And you could have it as a point or just as another squared off shape there, depending on the look that you want. Now this one was kind of hastily made, but we're going to see if it works. You also want to make sure that it's wide enough, but I don't know, let's see. Okay, so you can kind of see where I'm going with this. You can see that curve right there and that curve right there. So you want to match them up so that you make the other and there. If they were correctly matched up, that would be one single scale right there, rounded off for you. And here's the half of the next one and the half of the next one. And so you just keep going on like that. Remember to make the point the deepest part right there, and this can just kind of fade. Oh, see, I impressed it too much, but yeah, the deepest part at the tip. And you can see how that looks like dragon scale armor. Much better than just going like this in the clay and just like drawing it on the clay. So, there you go. 3D effects for all your mail armor needs and plate and scale and whatever. Thanks for watching. Let me know. And if you make any action figures or any custom little polymer clay charms or anything with using my technique, please make a video and add it to this video with your, what's it called? Oh, make a video response to this channel. Okay, or to this video. And let me see. Yay!